is the Business Storytelling Podcast with Christoph Trapp, available on Google, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, and other podcast channels. Want to play it on your iPhone? Just ask Siri to play the Christoph Trapp Business Storytelling Podcast, also available on Alexa. Here's Christoph with today's episode.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Business storytellers, thanks for tuning in. Another episode here. I'm going to put the little thing at the bottom. Unmute to hear me. Otherwise, you can't hear me. Common sense, right? We're live again. Amazon, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Periscope. And of course, the podcast version runs on the Business Storytelling Podcast. And today, now, we're talking about email marketing. And you know I love social. You know I love life. I'm back on the air here. Some technical difficulties for one reason or another today. So we want to talk about email marketing today. Email marketing is not dead. The end. Today's guest, I ran across him on Twitter. He writes over on, let's see if where did the website go? Associations Now. That's associationsnow.com. And he wrote an interesting article about the state of email marketing in 2021. What are the trends? What are the things to consider? He works with manifest.com. Ernie Smith. We'll get him on the show here. Ernie, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you making the time.
Glad to be here.
So tell us about email marketing. What do we have to think about? And I mean, it's always an interesting topic, right? I mean, it's not dead. Ask my email inbox. But what are the trends we have to focus on this year?
You know, the thing is, I think the email has been around forever, and I think that there's always conversation about it dying. And I think that in many ways, email marketing is more here right now than it probably has been in quite a while.
Because everybody is, checking email. I mean, it's hard for me to keep up on all these social streams, quite frankly. But why? What do you mean by that? Why is it here more than ever?
Well, I think that part of it is that there's a lot more sophistication in sort of the tools that are being used by businesses to reach customers. But on top of all this, there's kind of this trend that's going on right now that's really picking up, where more personal newsletters are also really, really coming into style, where it's becoming a little bit more of a way to have an intimate connection with readers, not just to have like a really targeted, marketing strategy as well.
Well, what's interesting about that comment, personal newsletters. I mean, I have a personal newsletter on my blog, right? AuthenticStorytelling.net. And certainly, I mean, I've had that for a long time, and it's slowly but surely growing. And now I don't know if you saw the news, but Twitter now has a social media, has an email newsletter integration. It's not perfect, and it doesn't integrate like the LinkedIn newsletters, for example. Like you go to Review, I don't know how to pronounce it, to sign up for their service, basically. But everybody seems to be pushing email for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Review is a really good example because that before Twitter bought it, literally last week they bought it. It had been a service that was a paid service that a number of media outlets, such as the Markup, used to basically send messages to their audiences. So the fact that like this was like a professional tool that is now bought by Twitter and is kind of being pitched as this free thing that consumers can use as well as businesses. I mean, like, I think that kind of shows how the tide is changing in email's favor.
So interesting comment. I actually blogged about that over on AuthenticStorytelling.net. So I might actually have to add that in there. So this conversation in the article. So really the reason Twitter is promoting it is because they own it. So they want to tie you more to them, right? So if I am an occasional Twitter user, but now I'm seeing that integration and I sign up, and I don't know, do you have to pay for it at some point, or is it free? It was free when I looked at it, but I don't know.
It's free, but like what they do, what the business model is, it's actually really comparable to Substack. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that service, but it's that's an email service that people can use to make their own subscription publications, and Substack takes a 10% cut. In the case of Review, after the Twitter acquisition, it's a 5% cut. So it's actually, if you want to start a subscription newsletter, you can kind of get a deal by going through Review. And if you just want to start something free, there's no charge. It's currently free to use.
So real advantages there, but you still, just like Substack, you still have to build your audience. I mean, so that's kind of why I gave up on it. I'm like, I don't want to import my list here. I don't like on LinkedIn, when I do a LinkedIn email newsletter, right? It goes to my connections and whatever. So that makes sense. But I'm like, now I got to build an email list again. How do I get it over here? Whatever. So, but it's also super easy to just implement implement it.
Yeah, I think that I literally just acquired them a week ago. So yeah. I'm sure that like they're just thinking, man, there are so many opportunities for this. They probably just want a mobile website where newsletters are listed on Twitter, and you click that and it leads to Review. Like that is the starting point of a good integration. But I think that there are a lot of advantages to Review in particular, in that it has a lot of Zapier integration. So you can basically hook it up to, if you have a Zapier account, you can hook it up to anything that has an API. So that means like if you're trying to build your list, like wherever, like maybe use like a pop-up tool like the hub that have that tie into Zapier, and that will go into your review list. And there are a number of other integrations as well, but like that I think is like kind of the advantage. If you already are good at marketing in other places, like it could be a real way to sort of build up, a list, build up an email offering on the cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just keep that in mind. You still got to grow your list. So in your article, you talked about like interactive elements, visual things, workflow optimization. Let's talk about that a little bit if we can. Interactive is interesting, and I'd like to hear your. I'm really sorry, I don't remember the name. It's been a few months, but basically the argument was we shouldn't do highly designed emails, right? Just like text, hello, Christoph, blah, blah, blah. It looks more human, doesn't look as markety. Is that what we're talking about here, interactive, to make it look, I hate to say the term, my design friends don't at me, don't be upset with me, but, do we want to make it pop more, or what are we talking about with interactive elements?
Well, I'm very much of the opinion, like I'm a bit of a design nerd. I've had a lot of I have a lot of background. Like I used to work in newspapers as a designer and such. So like, I'm always pro like visuals. that's just who I am. But that said, I think that in the case of email, there's been a bit of a challenge in trying to like make that kind of a medium that pops, in part because email clients like Outlook and Gmail, like they aren't like as robust with their email, with their HTML offerings as as say like a traditional web browser might be. But like one thing that's really evolved lately is there have been additional tools. AMP for Email, which is an offering that was started by Google. I think that they're trying to make it an open standard, but what it can do is offer a lot of interactivity to basically show you like here, you can make it so that you can do like an interactive quiz, or you could like have somebody fill out a form, or I mean, like a lot of these are theoreticals. I mean, like I don't think that a ton of people are using that just yet, but there are ways that it could really, just update over time to match your needs. But even with more traditional type of coding with emails, there's still a lot that could be done. I actually just ran into a message done by the New Yorker. It was like sort of a re-engagement type message where basically if you scrolled over a piece of text, like a button, it like would show, it would like pop up like some text message to like really encourage just like your cursor to engage with the message. So I think that as a result of just like this thing being in people's toolboxes for so many years, there is a discipline around it, and I think people are getting a lot better at trying to use email, and as a result it encourages just this kind of interactivity, from like people that are clever enough to take advantage of it, I guess.
Well, they make it more useful, hopefully, for the end user. That's always what I preach. Honestly, make it helpful for the end user. Stay in front of them and don't be a pain. Quite frankly, I just thought of that. I got an email today actually from somebody, and I know it was their automated email, and I like them. They're a thought leader. They're somebody I actually know personally. And the email says, "Well, you never open our emails. Would you still want to get them?" And I know that's a strategy. But I read them like in the preview, and sometimes I open them and sometimes I don't, So anyway, just that's on a side note a little bit. The other thing you talked about was workflow optimization. And this is always an interesting topic to me because I've worked with teams, Ernie, where literally they wrote them in a Word document and they copied and pasted stuff over. And I don't get it. I mean, I get it. I know why we're there. But even when it comes to content creation, how many content teams write in a Word doc or a Google Doc and then they copy and paste over? I directly write in WordPress, write in the CMS, wherever you create the content. And in WordPress, you can see changes. So when somebody goes in and they make changes, you can see them. It's not like track changes, but pretty close. And every time, my opinion is you copy and paste, you can insert mistakes into the workflow. It's just a pain in the butt. What else? Is that what we were talking about when we talk about workflow optimization, or what other things come to mind that people should focus on?
I think that that's part of it. I think that there's, I honestly, I have kind of strong opinions about this a little bit, but I do think that a lot of people who send emails, especially those that are intended to be like actual newsletters to send news, they approach it like, oh, we'll just build this in MailChimp or whatever. And, that just adds a lot of steps to the process because of the way that they have to build it. I mean, MailChimp's editor, it's fine for what it does, but, I think that what we're seeing a little bit is that there are pushes to take advantage of, okay, we already have WordPress, we already have Drupal, how can we make the workflow work within those? And I think that there are a couple of things that are being done on that front, which are really interesting. But I also think that you have to think about editorial workflow as well, which means like how the content is timed, how it's built out. And in the case of more automated messages, basically building out like specific workflows. So like if you're trying to do a re-engagement campaign, like this is how it's done. You're not reinventing the wheel every time out.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it comes back to, honestly, reinventing the wheel. I mean, seriously. And the other thing is, I don't know how can you automate things? So I'll give you an example. I know some of the stuff you can, but so if I write an article, I have the same inline call to action after the nth paragraph, right? And I can change the nth paragraph. I mean, I can do some of those things on email, right? Like it's automatically, I don't have to recreate the wheel. What else can I do? I mean, is there, we actually, Raza.io, they were on the show way back when, before we even went live with this baby. And they talked about some of the AI, how the AI puts things together, and based on what they think the user might find interesting. I mean, what other things should we know about?
Yeah, I should point out that associations now, ASAE, they actually use Raza.ai, and one of the things that they kind of do is their system is RSS, like it's RSS based. It kind of pulls in from a lot of different places, but like what it does is it actually, when things come in and get published, like they're kind of set up hierarchically so that one thing shows up in the top of the newsletter or something shows further down, and as a result of that, like the reader kind of gets a totally personalized newsletter each morning, which is really cool. I mean, that's something that I think is I think is going to become, for a lot of organizations that produce like a lot of content each day, associations now being kind of a great example of this. Like that helps to encourage readers who may find articles, in the case of association, more interesting than they might about, finance or, technology. And it kind of guesses like what they might want and gives them a little bit of a choice. So I think that is, I think is a strategy that is going to become more sophisticated over time. I think that there's also like conditionals in emails. So Email Octopus, which is an email provider I'm familiar with, they actually offer a way to do conditionals. So like if like there's, if like a user has this like status thing in the database, it'll show this message within the email, or what have you. And that way, you're not trying to build like multiple types of messages, to like hit different types of users. Like you're just building one message of, it matches what the user needs.
Which, of course, a little bit of a guessing game sometimes. I mean, it's like, I'm shopping for my wife on Amazon, and this happens less and less, not the shopping for her, but that Amazon gets it wrong. And now because I looked at something for her that I personally don't care about, Amazon chases me around the web with their ad to buy that. And that happens less and less. So certainly all this technology is getting better as we speak. And I mean, that's kind of the reality of things. The third item you mentioned in your article was the rise of dark mode. And believe it or not, Ernie, I got nothing. I got no opinion. Philip.
I appreciate your honesty on that one. Well, what I will say is that there's been kind of a push. Probably, it was kind of started a little bit by Apple with Mac OS 10.14 Mojave, which was basically the big feature in that version of Mac OS was dark mode, and I'm a fan. Basically, it changes your interface so that as a result, like you're not like getting hit with bright interface all over the place. And one of the things that Safari can do in particular is you can actually put settings in there so that when your user goes to that page and they have dark mode turned on, it'll show a dark version of the page rather than, the bright white page that you might traditionally get. And since Safari is kind of the basis for email in iOS in particular, it has made this opportunity for mobile emails to have like a dark mode that matches their user interface. It's become more common in Android and iOS, and I think that while it's not so much in the desktop versions of like Gmail, for example, I think that for many users, it's just kind of opportunity to have personal preference. It's kind of a design thing that like really comes out in favor of giving the user choice. And the downside of that is if you don't do anything, there's a chance that your email might look a little mangled. So you need to be aware of the issues of dark mode, even if you're not using it, just so you know, like, hey, like I might need to account for this in the next template that I build.
I'm serious. I mean, it never ends. The stuff that we have to worry about and think about. Oh my God, now we have different device sizes. Then we have this. Then we have that. Then we have whatever it's called, the promotions tab, which I don't really use that honestly, but stuff to think about. Then we have the whole thing about now you can delete emails from your Apple Watch, right? Like I see an email and I go trash, right? Boom, done. You can do that from your phone, et cetera, et cetera. Realistically, though, and when it comes to dark mode, how do I what do I even have to think about? Or is that more of a design decision? And then how do I test it, I guess?
I think that, one of the things that I'll say is that it is a design thing. I think that with email design, is kind of intertwined to it to a degree because marketing and design are so intertwined. So as a result, like you need to think about it in those terms. But I think that if you're a professional marketer and you're making a lot of emails, it might be good to invest in a tool that allows for testing. There are a couple out there. A couple that I know of are Litmus and Email on Acid. And basically what those do is they allow you to test one email across numerous clients. So you can get a look of like, okay, here's how it looks in standard Gmail. Here's how it looks in the most recent version of Outlook for Windows. Here's how it looks in Gmail for Android. Here's how it looks in, if you whatever option is out there, like they've thought of it. Like, and the thing is, like, people have, there are a lot of choices out there, and there are always those edge cases which might trip you up. I mean, if you remember like trying to build websites in the Internet Explorer 6 era, for example, like it's very much like that with email these days. It's kind of the same technology to some degree. So as a result, like with if you're doing a lot of email marketing, like design can be a part of it. So that's why stuff like dark mode comes up.
And a friendly reminder to anyone, not just the CEOs, not just the bosses, everybody, but especially the bosses. If you do use dark mode and you see a problem, don't email your team and say there's a problem with dark mode. Doesn't help. That's like saying to me, Christoph, we don't like you. And I'm like, why not? Well, because we don't. I can't improve on that. So take a screenshot, send it to the team. I'm sure everybody would want to learn together. I mean, this dark mode, it's pretty. I mean, I've actually used dark mode before. I'm not a big fan. I didn't realize how, what your take was on how it fits together. But every time you see something, take a screenshot, ship it to the team, and I'm sure they don't mind. So web fonts, that's another thing you mentioned in your article. By the way, guys, the link to the article is in the show notes, so you can click on over and take a look if you like to. What are we talking about here? Web fonts. What is that? Why is that important?
One thing I'll say is that for a number, this kind of ties into the same types of issues as dark mode does, which is basically that there are things that are possible, like on the web, that aren't as easily possible in email. And one of those things is the ability to add your own fonts. And I think that, what happens is that some of the most, for most users, they may not see like anything beyond like the standard, like 5 or 6 website fonts that, for example, they're using Gmail. But there are some areas where like fancier fonts are possible, and they tend to be areas that are most attractive to marketers. A good example of this is web fonts, which can be used on mobile Safari / Apple Mail. So as a result, like all those iPhone users that are, that they're looking at their email, they have the potential to get like a nicer experience than somebody who's, some person who's reading their email on Gmail, for example. So as a result, like it's one of those things where if you look at building email as like, here's the experience for most people, but there are potential areas to add value to more valuable types of users, mobile users being a good example of this. Like, there are cool ways to add to the experience. I think that it's one of those trends that it would be nice if it was in more places. It would be nice if Gmail supported it better. But the fact that like it does show up for a lot of people in Apple Mail, like that makes it kind of an attractive thing to try out if you're, interested in that type of audience.
Yeah, interesting. And certainly we need to think about how readable is it? How does it look? And especially on the web too. I mean, 14 font, 16 font size font, something like that. My latest book, it's coming out, guys, going live at /going-live. And I got 14 size font. So people can read it. So you don't have to bring it closer. Yes, I'm getting older, maybe not as grumpy as my age shows. But anyways, finally, you talk about user-generated content. And I do have a quick story on user-generated content. People have talked about that for a long time, and I grew up in journalism. And of course, generated content, that means they don't need journalists anymore. That means they don't need whatever. And I'm saying this again, just because people and users are people create content, that doesn't mean we don't need journalists. We still need professional writers. We still need live streamers. We still, like, everybody can go live. Like, seriously, can everybody go live like this to 6 channels and Amazon and put it into a podcast? Well, to an extent they can, but there is a certain level of skill involved, right? To pull it off without giving yourself a heart attack every time. I'm just giving everybody the advice: don't be so defensive about using user-generated content or working with people. I'm not a big fan of the term user. Like, I don't know, people-generated content isn't much better, quite frankly. But they're people. Like, they're part of our community, part of our audience. But why is user-generated content? Let's stick with the term, whether I like it or not. Why is that important, and how does that fit into email for the year here?
I think that one of the things that's really key is that, given this is associations now, like, one of the things that they're always focused on is trying to engage with their members, trying to engage with the people that they're trying to reach. So, obviously users, takes a lot of forms, but I think that in this case, thinking about the way that an association or a trade group wants to encourage conversation to happen, user-generated content is a great way to do this, because if you send a message out to your members that has a little bit of an authentic feel to it, it feels like you're not getting the message from top on down. Like, it feels like you're seeing, it feels like it's making you a little bit more of a part of the conversation. And I think that one of the things I mentioned in the piece is, like, you could use tools to, like, sort of pull in this user-generated content. Like, Typeform is a really good example of a tool like this. Like, you can use that to just sort of pull your readers occasionally, and use that as a way to build out, like, a regular news. And that way you can kind of hit your members, or kind of hit your audience, whatever the shape that is, like obviously, a giant company may have a little bit more of a challenge, trying to do user generated content versus a small business. But I think that the idea basically translates so that it shows that you have, you are listening and you are trying to encourage engagement with readers. And I think that user generated content, like it's also a way, kind of touching on your point with journalists and such, like, I think it's a way to really curate your audience a little bit and sort of highlight the way that they're thinking about like a specific issue. Like if you put a tough question in front of them and they offer an interesting answer, like that, it may not be the same as reporting, but it's a really smart way to use kind of your journalistic nose, to really tell an interesting story, even if like they're the ones writing all the words. Be the same as reporting, but it's a really smart way to use kind of your
Smith, thanks for joining us on the show today. You can't hear me, right? Things are not working for some reason. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me now. So what happened is I trust that Ernie didn't say anything inappropriate. He kept talking. It was super weird. I could still see him. It looks like we didn't lose any connection. Super weird. But anyway, technology. We made it almost to the end, and then it gave up on us. Ernie, it was great to have you on the show. Great for you. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. People can connect with you, of course, on LinkedIn. We shared that link, manifest.com. Really quickly, what's manifest.com?
It is a content marketing agency. Has a whole lot of content, a whole lot of marketing. But it was content marketing agency of the year in 2019. And I've been there for over 8 years now, so clearly I must like it.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. Congratulations for the Content Marketing World Award last year. We'll see what happens with Content Marketing World this year. Would be nice to go back to Cleveland for sure. COVID, I've been in this seat, seriously, the last 12 months, haven't gone anywhere. Ernie, nice to connect with you. Really appreciate you making the time. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Take it easy.